We're here today with Burt Brandi. We're going to talk about music and practicing and gigging and equipment. Hey, Burt, thanks for being here today.
Absolutely. It's great to see you again, Rob.
Yeah, man. So I just want to ask you, where did you grow up?
Grew up in South San Francisco, which is in the San Francisco Bay Area. Born and raised.
And when did you first get into music?
Music has always been in my household. I always wanted to be a drummer at a super young age. I didn't start playing until I was 15, but both my brothers play. One brother plays bass, one brother plays guitar. In fact, my brother that plays guitar took lessons for several years from Joe Satriani when Joe used to teach in Berkeley, across the bay from us, and he taught it a little. I forgot the name of the music store, but this is right when Joe Satriani started to become big, and it's right when Not of This Earth came out. I don't know if you heard of that album, where I believe he self-produced it. But Joe had a ton of students, and that's right about the time I was 15. And this is bringing back great memories. So my brother met Doug Doppold. In fact, I think he started taking lessons with Doug Doppold first, who was a Joe Satriani protege on the East Bay. And Doug played in a band called Kimosabi. And Steve Bowman was the drummer at the time. And so my brother was roadieing for Doug, and then I was starting to get into drums, and Steve Bowman was 20 years old at that time, 21, and I was 15. And I started roadieing for Steve, which was probably the best learning lesson of my time. I was able to. He was playing at gigs on the East Bay, the Berkeley Square, which I don't even know if it even exists anymore. All those bars out there, he was playing, or Kimosabi, the band, was playing all the time. And so I would set up Steve's drum set, tear him down, and he'd give me drum lessons for free, which at that time, my parents didn't have a whole lot of money, and I took lessons from Steve. And then my first drum teacher was Jim Munzenreiter, and he taught at a local music store in downtown South San Francisco at Bronstein's. So I was taking lessons with him. So I was taking lessons with both, and I was trying to get as much information as possible. And again, you got to remember, back then, God, it was in the 80s. Back then, there was no YouTube, there was no internet. So in order to learn, you had to go find really good teachers. So I did that for quite a while with Steve, became friends with him. And again, it was the best learning lesson that I had, because I was able to see the band live. They would do sound check. It was interesting. They would do sound check, and then they would take all their stuff off, and then the next band would do sound check, and they'd take all their stuff off, and then we'd set them back up. And it was a really cool era in time. And then I would sit behind Steve, like on the floor, and I would just sit there, and I had earplugs in, but I would sit there and just watch him play, a set of original, music. And that band was more of a funk rock type band. And they were really good. So that was my first kind of really introduction to music, live music. And ever since that, I was like, God, I want to do this. And I practiced. I think I stopped hanging out with all my friends. I was practicing 8 hours a day, and I have recordings back then. They were terrible. I was like, I was like, oh my God, no sense of time, no sense of tone. And I have cassette tapes of that. In fact, I think I pulled all that stuff off and made it digital. And, every now and then I'll go back and listen to it and just kind of smile. But my parents were really supportive. I had my drum set in my bedroom, no soundproofing. First drum set was a Pearl Export, which I sold several years back, just to make room for my other drum sets that I ended up getting. But it was a great moment in time. I mean, the music scene in the Bay Area was just amazing. And as a 15-year-old, I wasn't, you can't go into a bar. They allowed me to go in. And the reason I had to sit behind Steve, it's all coming back to me here, is because I was under 21. And they would tell, the bar owners or what have you, well, he's part of the band. He sits on my drums. And like, okay, that's fine, but he's got to sit with you on stage. He can't be like floating around the bar. And they let me do it, which was surprising because I don't think they would ever allow that, period. So that's basically how I got into music. And music's always been in my life. And then my brother and I, my older brother who played bass, was in a cover band in Chico, California. And I was in high school. So probably a couple years later, around 16, 17. And so my brother, who's a guitar player, and I moved up to Chico, and I went to high school. I was a junior, and we joined the cover band for Chico. And Chico State, at that time known for the best party town in the U.S. for college. And we were playing gigs downtown Chico, frat parties. I was playing all these gigs at 16, 17 years old. And then going to high school in Chico. And I only went for 1 year. We only did it for about a year. And then I moved back down to the Bay Area. But that was really cool too, because we were playing, cover music, but, we were getting paid. What was more important to me is we were just playing. So trying to think after that, came back down to the Bay Area, graduated high school, kept playing in bands throughout the Bay Area, original bands, cover bands, more original actually. And I was still in contact with Steve Bowman at the time. And around 92, 93, Steve got into Counting Crows. He played on the first August and everything after. And I, again, started roadieing for him again. Counting Crows was starting to get really, really big in the Bay Area. Then they ended up getting signed. And I remember roadieing for Steve right when they were starting to get really big, and they had gigs at the DNA Lounge in San Francisco, and I'd go there and roadie for him there. And it was a really cool time. That I kind of miss that era of going out and seeing a live band and a live good band, or good bands. I mean, there was a lot of bands at that time that were just playing all over the Bay Area, which was pretty amazing. And then I started taking lessons, and this is before I started taking lessons with you, Rob. I started taking lessons with John Mader. And John Mader played, again, during the same Kimosabi era with the Uptones. And so that's how I met John, because John, either Kimosabi opened for the Uptones or the Uptones opened for Kimosabi. It was always kind of a flip-flop. They always played together between San Francisco and the East Bay. And met John, and the Uptones, again, at that time were a really top Bay Area ska band. And John was an amazing player. So I ended up doing kind of the same thing with him, where I started roadieing for him as well and sitting behind him, and he was playing. He ended up leaving the Uptones and started playing with SRO. And it was a really premier dance cover band that played all over the Bay Area, and they were playing like huge gigs. They played at the Great American Music Hall, and they would pack that place. I mean, they would literally sell that place out, and they're playing. I mean, they're like I forgot, like a 15-piece band, and so I would roadie for him during that time, and again, just learn just amazing things. And if there's anything that I would encourage any young player, if it's still around, is to connect with a really good drummer and roadie for them and set up their drums and sit there and watch them play. I mean, there's more learning looking at someone live and just seeing how they navigate through real live music. And I understand we got YouTube now and everything, which is great. It's a great resource. But you're seeing everyone's perfections, because they're not going to put out their worst stuff. They're going to put out their best stuff, which is great. Because when you record yourself and you go back and listen, you're like, holy mackerel, that sounds terrible. So you're going to go back and re-record it. But that was a really good lesson for me. And then I did it again. So I kind of stuck to this theme. Atma and Norm. You've ever heard of Atma?
Yes.
Yeah. So Doug Doppold, who was with Kimosabi and Joe Satriani's student, and I forgot the name of the band, but it was called the Doppel Effect. So it was a very progressive rock, solo type, they didn't know singing. It was just, it was kind of in the vein of Joe Satriani. It was just very instrumental. And Atma Noor, I mean, there's a few videos on YouTube of him, which I don't think does him any justice. I mean, he's great on the videos, don't get me wrong, but holy mackerel, that guy was an amazing player. And my brother was in that band for a little bit, and would roadie for him, and I'd be able to like hang out and watch him play. And that guy's feet were probably the most amazing feet I've ever seen in my entire life. Double bass. I mean, he would play these 16 and 30-second notes with his feet, and there was not a whole lot of movement with how far the beater came off the bass drum. I mean, it was like, he had like this much space, and he would also pull his feet back where it looked like he was playing on the chain link of the pedal, which I've never seen anyone do that before, but he would get this amazing power. So I took some lessons with him. What made it hard for me, though, learning from him, he was a great teacher, but he had a different philosophy. Everything was numbers. And I'm used to 16th notes, 1 eanda, 2 eanda, 3 eanda, 4 eanda. He was like 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4. And I couldn't figure that out. And he was very into odd times, 5s and 7s. And I'm looking at myself going, God, I can barely play a decent funk groove in 4/4. Let me take a step back and go back to trying to perfect my 4/4 groove before I get into 5s and 7s. But he would have this wall of cymbals, and I still to this day don't know how he set it up, but he had this wall of cymbals. His toms would be kind of high and angled. And when he played, it sounded acoustically, it sounded like his drums were mic'd. He played hard, but the sound coming from those drums were just like, it was fat. And then when I go and sit down and I played, I felt like I felt like he was huge. And then I go and play, I felt like I was like, I was super thin. I'm like, God, how does he do it? But he had a way to pull the sound out of those drums. And he had some amazing grooves that I didn't even understand. Like, he was playing some stuff in, odd times and sticking patterns and all this stuff. And so I definitely learned quite a bit on, from him as well. And then I met you, and it was through your ad. And I think it was in
BAM Magazine.
BAM Magazine, yeah. So contacted you and started. So that era is kind of all the same, for me. I mean, it probably spanned over a good 5 to maybe 10 years where I was just searching for information. I was just looking to get different perspectives from different drummers to just get better. And I was also, and this is a learning lesson for anybody, I was also looking for the shortcut, which there is none. There is no shortcut, and that goes for anything in life. But in order to be good at something, you got to put the time in. You got to practice, and you got to practice daily, and there's no finish line. And I was looking at that time, and I was young. At that time, I was looking for the finish line. I was looking for the ultimate, like, secret sauce. Like, what is it that I can do to just get to, like, the Dave Weckl status or the Vinny Colaiuta status? Well, you can't get to that status without playing every single day or without practicing every single day. I mean, you got to live and breathe it. And, my only regret musically is I handicapped myself. Like, originally I wanted to go to PIT, Musicians Institute in LA. My brother did for guitar. And I wanted to do that. I wanted to get down to Hollywood. I wanted to do that whole thing. And then I got a really good job, and I started getting promoted and everything. But I looked back, and I still look back, that the reason I didn't do that is because of fear of the unknown. And it's not easy making money as a musician. And I was afraid, this is me personally, I was afraid of starving, not making ends meet and being a musician. It's not easy. I look at guys like you and John Mayer. To this day, John is playing. And, I actually ran into him, 6 years ago now. In Virginia. He posted on Facebook that he was playing at some club that was literally 30 minutes from my house. I'm like, John's over here. So I hopped in my car, went over, and I missed the whole set, but I was able to, connect with him, and we chatted for a little while, and he was playing with Stu Ham. And again, they were playing this like dive bar in Virginia. And a lot of people came out. And Alex Skolnick was the guitar player playing, and John, he's done so many sessions, he gigs live all the time. And he told me he's done well for himself. But what it took him and someone like you, Rob, it was daily. It was daily work. It wasn't something that, where it just gets handed to you as a musician. You have to go and put your time into it. And when I look back now, I'm like, I was afraid of that. And I chose the easy route, so I got a career, started working for a big corporation, got promoted. They moved me from the Bay Area down to Southern Cal, and then from Southern Cal to New York, New Jersey, lived over there, and then from there to Virginia, and then I decided to move to Colorado. So it wasn't until last year, actually, let me take a step back. When I got to San Diego, I got into 2 different bands. And this is a this is a good learning lesson too. I was in a cover top 40 band, playing to a click track, playing, Friday, Saturday nights, almost every weekend, with sequencers, which was a great, probably one of the best chop building tools out there to play with a click 4 hours a night. Amazing. I mean, my time was great, and not perfect, but it forced you to be good. And I loved it. And then I was in an original band, and we won like a competition, and that band was called Juiced. And I'm still friends with James Brady, but James fired me. And what happened was he wanted me to focus on the original band. And I kind of remember this like yesterday. We both kind of got into a disagreement. And I'm like, well, I'm still playing in the cover band because I'm making money over here. In cover band, you make a lot more money than you do in an original band. So I always gravitated to, and you played longer. That was actually my main thing. I'd rather play 4 hours a night than play 30 minutes, take my expensive drum set, put it up on stage, which takes 30 minutes, 15 to set it up, 15 to tear it down. And then you play 30 minutes and you get paid nothing. It's like, it's gone, like that. But cover bands for me was chop building, groove building, fun, people dancing on the dance floor. It wasn't original music, but it really improved my playing. So in this original band, Juiced in San Diego, we're starting to make some really good reputation as an original band. And it was 3 of us. It was kind of a rock, funk. Our bass player was amazing. His name was Carl. He was very into slapping and trying to think of, it'd be like I don't know if this is right, but like Chili Peppers meeting Van Halen kind of thing. And we did a small demo in my basement, which actually came out pretty decent. So we went and played at this club. I think it was Brick by Brick in San Diego, and the drummer from 24/7 Spies was there. And we're actually, this band was like 24/7 Spies. I'm trying to name, but he loved us. He wanted to produce us. Well, what happened was I ended up getting fired, and the drummer from 24/7 Spies ended up taking the drum chair. And he was way better than me. He was a really, really good drummer. And so they went and did a demo, and it came out pretty good. He produced it. Actually, I shouldn't say a demo. They came out with a full-length CD, and he produced it. And I thought it sounded great. But my understanding is James, the guitar player, singer, and Carl hated it. I'm not sure why. I remember talking with, because then I ended up playing in a different band with Carl later, and Carl said after he listened to the CD, he like took it and broke it and just like into that again. Well, one of the reasons was his bass was mixed like super low, and it was really hard to hear him. It was more drums. Then again, it was produced by a drummer, so it's going to be more drums. But that drummer, and I can't believe I'm drawing a blank on his name, was pretty amazing. A lot of chops, double bass chops. And his drums sounded great on the CD. I actually have a copy of it, and I thought it was great. And some of the ideas, like I wrote the drum parts for these songs, and he changed some of them, but he took the framework and the idea and kind of made it his own, which was, in my opinion, I didn't take it personal because he didn't fire me. I got fired by James, which I didn't take it. This day, I don't even take it personal now. I'll be honest, I was pissed. But I think I deserved it because I was in my 20s and I wasn't flexible. And there's something it taught me that I needed to be a little more flexible and figure out how to balance two bands or make a choice. And I wasn't looking at it that way. And again, this is something that's good for all players. Being in a band is not easy. It's like a marriage that to people that you don't want to be married to, in some cases. And there's going to be disagreements. There's going to be someone that's always taking charge. I've been in a few other bands since that band, and I was in another good band called Gimmick, and the guitar player was always telling me what parts to play, and I always tried to approach it without an ego and go, okay, try to pretend, because I always wanted to be a studio drummer, try to pretend you're in a studio and an artist is telling you what to play. And some of the stuff that he was asking me to play, I'm like, it just doesn't make sense, but I'm like, I'm going to try it. And I did the best that I could. But the learning lesson here is you got to be flexible when you're in a band. And you can't have an ego. And it's hard because everybody has their own idea of where the band should go, what direction it should go, the way the music should sound, the way the music should be mixed and what have you, all those kinds of things. And I learned to just be as flexible as possible, to just, be a team player with the musicians that you have. So kind of a long answer, Rob, to your first question. But we haven't talked in a long time. Besides the Bay Area guys that I just talked about, you, John, Steve, Atma, I can tell you Stuart Copeland, by far. I love the Police. Jeff Porcaro, I actually met Jeff Porcaro at the NAMM show once, literally the year before he died. Remo was having, I forgot what it was, like their 90th year anniversary or something. And it was in this big giant ballroom at a hotel, and the word was out, Toto was going to play. And, I was down there with my brother and a bunch of other musician friends, and we're like, oh my God, Toto's going to play. And Jeff Porcaro by far is one of my all-time heroes, and very underrated drummer by some, not most. A lot of drummers know that Jeff Porcaro is just amazing. I mean, the groove and the hits that he has been on, I mean, you listen to just about any early Michael Jackson stuff, it's most likely Jeff Porcaro. And so I walked up to him. I forgot how old I was. I mean, I was pretty young. I shook his hand, and he was real cool to me, but he didn't have a whole lot of time to talk. He was just outside the ballroom, and he took off. So we go into the ballroom, and there was two stages. There was Louis Bellson and his band on one stage, and then you had Toto set up on this other stage, right and left. So Louis Bellson and their band was playing, and they're doing their jazz thing, and he sounded amazing and had his double kick bass or his double kick set up there as Remo set. And then here comes Toto. They come up, they play one song. They play a song, and I forgot what record it came off of, but it's Jake the Bone. And if anybody, just go on to Spotify or YouTube or wherever you get your music and go find the song Jake the Bone. It's an instrumental. And I believe there's a section in there that's in like 7/8. So they came up and they played that song, and it was packed. We were like really close to the stage. I'm super young, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm just seeing like magic happen right now. They finished the song. They all got off the stage. That was it. Just that was like, they're like, that's all we're doing. And everyone was just like in awe. So definitely Jeff Porcaro. Stuart Copeland, Manu Katché, Peter Gabriel. He played with Peter Gabriel and Sting and Tears for Fears and a million other people. If you ever look him up, Phil Gould. That's a name probably most people don't know from Level 42. Yeah. One of my most favorite records is CDs now, is the Physical Presence live album from Level 42. And there's some amazing drumming and solo drumming on that record, which again was that 1980s era of that, kind of that funk pop era and just live music. Tony Williams. I was never a big jazz drummer. Not because I love jazz. I listen to jazz all the time. Jazz was just hard for me. I was just more of a rock, pop 2 and 4 type drummer. And I shouldn't say it was hard for me. I didn't put in the time. And I wish I put in more time. That's probably the better answer. But I did take a master class with Tony Williams before he passed away, and it was at Drum World. And he had I think there was 10 of us in there. The bummer about that, in fact, I have it on DAT. He let us record it. And I hope that I have the DAT cassette in a shoebox somewhere, and I probably should have recorded it to hard disk because it's probably destroyed at this point because those DAT tapes just fall apart. Yeah. But anyways, the bummer about those lessons was he didn't do it on a drum set. He did it on a Remo practice pad, and we all had Remo practice pads. But the one thing I learned about him, which I don't think, I guess Vinny Colaiuta would probably be just as good, is his single stroke roll was amazing. I mean, you can't you ever see, there's a song on Tony Williams' Lifetime and on Emergency, that record Emergency, where he opens up and he's doing a single stroke roll in the beginning of the song, and then he just goes into this rock fusion thing. I'm like, holy mackerel. And I asked him about that, and he looked at me and goes, you like that record? And I'm like, yeah. He's like, yeah, that's not my favorite. I'm like, okay. But what I really asked him about was his single stroke roll, and he showed it to us on this Remo practice pad. And it sounded just as amazing on this silly Remo practice pad than it would have if it was on a snare drum. And there's something to say about, touch, pressure, how he did it. He made that Remo practice pad sound like a drum, and it was just mind blowing. But he was another guy. Trying to think of who else. I can't leave out 2 more people. John Bonham from Led Zeppelin. I'm a huge Led Zeppelin fan. I don't consider John Bonham a rock drummer. Everyone does, but if you listen to what he plays on those songs, it's just, again, he's another guy, just touch, and I would read articles. I read articles where like the James Brown drummers went and touched his bass drum, and though he had this giant bass drum, he had those, according to the articles I read, he had his drum heads so tuned up high and tight, but he was still able to get this giant low end bass out of it, which if you ever look at my bass drums, they're as loose as possible. So it's kind of interesting just hearing the history behind John Bonham. And then there's so many, but I'll end with this last one. Carlton Barrett with Bob Marley. And if you listen to those Bob Marley records, in the 70s, I mean, today they're still timeless. I mean, the quality of those recordings on any of them. My favorite record and my first reggae record is, I think, hopefully I'm pronouncing it right, is Bob Marley and the Wailers, Kaya. And the drumming on that, and you look at these old pictures of Carlton Barrett and his drum set that's like falling apart. And I remember Jim Munzenreiter, my first drum teacher, told me he went to Jamaica once, and he said the most amazing drummer he's ever seen was, and he didn't know the guy's name, but was this reggae street drummer in Jamaica that had this drum set that had this plush carpet like wrapped around the bass drum, and then they put the lugs on top of it. The bass drum head was broken so many times that it was held together by duct tape and whatever you can think. The snare drum was rusted, the cymbals were falling apart. But he said this reggae drummer, this street drummer, they were on the street playing. He said was the most amazing sounding reggae drummer he's ever heard in his lifetime. And that just goes back to, either you love gear or you love to play. And when you look at someone like Carlton Barrett and his brother who played bass, and some of those bass lines, I mean, all of those bass lines are amazing. But if you go and you listen to those, and you really listen to those records or CDs or Spotify or however you're getting your music, and you put on the headphones and actually listen and just really try to hear just the drums. I mean, the hi-hat parts that Carlton Barrett was playing. I have one more drummer. Sorry, it just popped in my head, and this is why I'll share with you why. But anyways, you listen to those hi-hats, they are recorded. It's like the most amazing sounding hi-hats ever, and I would love to see. I don't even know what kind they were, and I'm sure it's documented somewhere. One more drummer. And I forgot to share this with you, David Garibaldi. I did take one drum lesson with him at his house in Livermore. And in fact, I have Future Sounds, which I can't even get past the first 2 pages of that book. I'm still stuck on the paradiddle section. But he was a really nice guy, and we worked out of Future Sounds, and the most amazing ghost notes. Anybody that's out there, just amazing. And when you look at his videos, I still remember to this day, because I'll play ghost notes with some of the funk stuff that we play in my cover band. He says it's a half an inch. It is a half an inch, and I'll look at like other players on YouTube and it's an inch and a half. But his hi-hat unaccented notes and his snare drum unaccented notes, half an inch. So after we got through the lesson, he was really cool. Like he wasn't watching the clock and like, okay, you got to go. We just started talking. And I brought up Carlton Barrett to him. And his eyes just like lit up. He's like, "Oh yeah, absolutely, man. One of my favorite songs is Exodus, and all it was is just 4 on the floor, and the hi-hat pattern on that song." And so clearly David Garibaldi knows what I'm talking about when it came to this amazing reggae drummer that most people probably don't even know his name when they hear a Bob Marley song. And of course, Bob Marley, the whole band was amazing, but Bob definitely made the music. But you got to give that rhythm section some credit, man. It's definitely something to learn from. There's no one doing that today, and that's where, I kind of wish there was somebody out there that just like. I always go back to those old CDs or old music and get inspired, because no one's doing that today anymore. At least that's my opinion. I could be dead wrong, but that's what I'm thinking. Sorry, another long answer to your question.
I also remember with you and teaching for so long, I always remember my students bringing stuff into me, what was happening at the time. And Carter Beauford, I remember you coming in with that, and they just played on like Saturday Night Live or something, and you go, you got to check this guy out. And I remember that, and he had this kind of fusion style and playing with the Dave Matthews Band, and you're like, yeah, I like this guy, and I think they did like they had that one hit.
Their first CD, their first CD that hit the radio.
Right. And you turned me on to that. But a lot of you guys, man, I got to hand it, like playing my whole life, but having kind of insurgence of different players, that people would bring into me. Oh, you got to check out this guy. And it was happening at the different eras, Stuart Copeland was one, Burt was one. What was the guy from Primus? Herb was one.
Tim Alexander.
So it was like just a lot of these different phases and different times, and it was really amazing. And I'd check out everybody, and I loved it. I love the input from people. Kind of what I'm doing here too. It's like I'm reconnecting with people, and it's actually really refreshing. So I'm really digging it. Going on to the next question: did you participate in school music programs like concert band, symphonic band, jazz band, marching band? Did you do theater work, pit work?
I did, but not at the extent that I probably could have. So my first experience in school band, I actually played the saxophone, which I actually tried out for drums. And I remember that actually I tried out for drums in elementary school, and I remember this like yesterday because it still haunts me to this day because I didn't get it. But the music teacher would like clap out rhythms, and then you would have to copy it. And I'm going to be honest, I was terrible. I still think I'm terrible. There's always room for improvement, but I think I may have got 2 rhythms right, and then the third one I didn't, and then you got eliminated. Like, all right, you're out, you're eliminated. Next person. I'm like, So I ended up taking up the saxophone from elementary school to junior high. And then in high school, I got into drums. And I don't remember, it didn't last long. It was a concert band. It didn't last long. I do remember, I have it sitting right here, Stick Control. I remember bringing that book. And there's 3 of us, 3 drummers. And while the music teacher was constantly working on the rest of the band and the wind section or whatever, we would sit there and we would challenge each other on how far we can get down the first page without screwing up. Stick Control. But after that, I don't remember why I don't think I went back. I think I may have done it for like a semester but it was snare drum, and I was like, I want to play drum set. And then the jazz was locked up with like two other drummers that were more experienced than I was at the time, and you just couldn't get in. So I think I just dropped it and went to private teaching at that point. Became a student.
Cool. So you've kind of answered a lot of the questions, and I'm going right to the band question now. So what was like one of your most memorable gigs playing in a band, playing live or recording?
I got a really good recording, a demo that I did. Actually, there's two really good ones actually. So David Emmergluck is a guitar player for Counting Crows now today, and he played with Camper Van Beethoven in the Bay Area, which was I don't remember because I didn't really follow those bands. I think Cracker was a break off. There's a band called Cracker that was a break off of Camper Van Beethoven. So he was that guitar player. And I was in a band called the Electric Company. And I was playing with Dan Eisenberg. He was an organ player and he played a B3. And we're an original band. And I was like 21, 22 at the time, and we were playing, all over the East Bay, and we were lugging that B3 everywhere. I mean, it took the whole band to move that thing, plus the Leslie speaker, but it was amazing. I mean, the sound and Dan, he still to this day is playing. He's played with so many people. He played with Adam Duritz from Counting Crows before Counting Crows. He plays with David Emmergluck, who's in Counting Crows. He plays with I forgot the name of the drummer that's in Counting Crows right now. They have like a side band that they're playing right now. So that's how I met David Emmergluck. This is where I'm going with this. So and then Marty Jones was the bass player for Counting Crows. So Marty Jones is actually Mr. Jones. So the song that Adam wrote about Mr. Jones was about his bass player, Marty Jones. And so David, Marty Jones, and I'm drawing a blank on the singer was in I can't believe I'm drawing a blank on his name. He was in a band where Adam Duritz sang backup on some of the songs. So we did a demo. We did like a 3-song demo, and that was like the closest I got to like stardom, like being with these guys and playing. And we did it in a real recording studio. When I say real recording studio, I'm talking like, it's in a warehouse, and it's like back in the day where you had a giant board and a room and all that stuff. Not like what we're doing today where it's in our basements and stuff. And 2-inch tape, some of the younger players probably don't know what that means, but 2-inch reel to reel. And I have those demos today, and they sound great. It was really good playing. So that was definitely my probably most memorable, proud moment that I've had. That was one. And then I did a lot of record. We were in a really good band in Chico, another original band. We did a lot of really good recording. We had an amazing singer, super young kid at the time, very talented. Not sure what happened to him. The band kind of disbanded over time. But I have a lot of really cool demos that I think are, would have been at that time radio friendly, radio ready. But it's just, and I think there's a lot of bands out there that were just amazing, but just never got past that to break over, to break through and get into the mainstream, radio scene. Back then, the goal was to get on the radio. It was pre-internet, so not like today where you can kind of do your own thing and produce your own thing. But those were kind of my proudest moments. And then my most recent, playing in the band that I'm in now, cover band that's been around in Colorado, because I live in Colorado, for over 10 years. And I got hooked up with them about a year and a half ago, and playing 52 gigs in a year, on top of working a full-time job and having a wife and 3 kids. Thank God for my wife, because I wouldn't be able to do it if she didn't support it. It was hard. I loved it. Loved every minute of it. But it's physically, it could be physically taxing. I mean, I had no roadie. I'd be lucky if I made $100 at a bar gig. Weddings and corporate gigs paid a lot more, and we got fed, which was great. But you have to love drums, because they're not fun loading in and out at 2 a.m. I was always the first one in, and I was always the last one out. It was me and the sound guy, and our sound guy, he has the old analog board and the big giant speakers, and he's old school. He does not like digital. His name's Lou, and with him and I would talk music as we're tearing down. He's a big Rush fan, and Rush was my first concert at 13, and that's actually kind of what really drove me towards drums, because I was able to see Neil Peart, and then the Dixie Dregs actually opened for them. These are all old names, Rob, and that was Rod Morgenstein playing drums. I mean, these are like legends that you don't hear about anymore, and that's really what I was 13 years old, and that was my first concert, and my brother took me, and luckily my mom let me go, which today's standard, my wife wouldn't let my 16-year-old son go to any concert, right now. But those are the memories, man. I definitely cherish them, and I highly encourage people to just go see live music if you can. I know right now we're in the middle of a pandemic and there isn't any, but if that means just go on YouTube and look at old live concerts. Greg Bissonet's another drummer that I love and admire, and I seen Van Halen and Davey Roth in the same year, and the Davey Roth band smoked Van Halen, and you had Steve Vai, Billy Sheehan, and Greg Bissonette, an amazing band, which again today most people would be like, who are those guys? But again, legends. It's just amazing what some of these guys did, and they practiced every single day. Long answer again. Sorry.
Okay. That's actually segues into the next question. What was your past practice routine, and what is your current practice routine?
All right. Well, I can tell you this year, poor excuse, very poor excuse. This year, I haven't practiced a whole lot because all our gigs were canceled. And we have a couple weddings that are apparently coming up in September. So I got to start getting back into shape. And I can tell you this, when you stop practicing, it's like you stop running. It's easy to get back into shape, but if I was to go play a gig tonight, I would be hurting pretty bad. I probably wouldn't be able to. Some of the songs that we play are like at 160, 180 beats per minute, like fast rock pop songs. And you have to be in shape to do that. So I definitely would have to get back in shape. So here I was going to show you this, and I don't even know how old this thing is. So here's my you can't, it's probably backwards, but it says perfect. Drum practice log. And look at that. I even had a label maker.
Awesome.
So my when I started doing this was 1999, which is 21 years ago. And so this is April of 1999. So I can say I did the Stone Killer at 120, 160, 190, 106 beats per minute, 1 minute each. So I would really focus on not speed, but to try to build up that endurance. And then stick control, I would go through the first page, 1 minute each. And if there's anything that we can teach our young students today is I still have it. It's actually under my music stand. This silly timer. I use, if you read stick control, it says, do 20 repetitions and then move on to the next. And there was one time where I'm like, okay, I'm trying to count to 20, but it's distracting me. And I'm like, get a timer. And so I'm like, all right, I'm going to do it for a minute. This way I don't have to think about how many times I'm doing it, and do it for a minute, do it for 5 minutes, do it for 10 minutes, whatever the time frame that you want to do. Play a rock group for, 5 minutes straight without a fill, without doing anything. Or play a jazz, groove for whatever time. Those were the little shortcuts I was looking for to try to speed up time for me and save time. And then if you fast forward to today, I can look at the last time that I put something in there. I've been really trying to improve my feet. My foot pedal work. And so I came across this book here years ago, Kenny Aronoff's Power Workout. And it's basically derived from the first, 16 exercises in stick control, and where you're doing a groove, a 16-note double bass groove, and then you're doing this eighth note stick control patterns with your right foot doing all the upbeat 16th notes, or your left foot doing all the upbeat 16th. And it has really helped me with just basic independence and endurance at the same time. And so I was looking for things that were going to help me in my band situation, which I need endurance, because if you're playing, 4 45-minute sets from 9 p.m. to almost 2 in the morning, you have to have endurance for that. And so I was always looking for exercises. So stick control, power workout. I would, the other book that I have is the Gary Chafee book. And then I have all the songs that I play in my cover band, I went and found them online, transcribed. That was another challenge and that was another practice thing. That was another challenge that I did, was I wanted, and I'm still not there yet, but I wanted to try to play every cover song that we were playing in the band note for note. I want to try to play the exact same thing that the drummer played. Which is not easy, because it's not you, it's their idea. And there's some complicated little licks in there that I'm like, holy crap, I don't even know how he's doing that, so I had to come up with my own version of it. But I have, what did I do with that? I have that here. And believe it or not, so these are all the songs that we play. Believe it or not, so we have Hella Good from No Doubt. We have Walking on Sunshine. We have Summer of '69 from Bryan Adams. And again, there's some weird tom parts in there that I would never play, and I bring that with me, and I have my computer on this music stand, but I would have that music stand off and I would put all the songs in order, so the set list changed every night. And so I would reorder the songs, put them all in order, and I would sit there and, I wouldn't have to look at the music for the song structure, but when I knew there's that one part that's coming up, I had to look at it and go, okay, I want to hit this fill right here. And I would look at it before that section came up and try to hit it. In some cases I did. In some cases I'm like, oops, yeah, that didn't go well. But that is part of kind of, since I'm in this cover band, is really trying to hit these songs, note for note, and not just play a beat and call it good. And that's actually really helped me with this band. Our band manager is pretty specific on, he's one of our guitar players, on how we need the sound. And so he's always complimented how I'm always trying to just, stick to the original song, which a lot of cover bands, most drummers don't do that. And part of it is we didn't have those resources back in the day. Now you have the internet, and I would say a good 90% of my songs I either found for free or some website charged like $3, and I would pay the $3 and download the chart and get it.
That's great. A lot of those things bring back memories with the timer, because when I did stick control and I first started out with my teacher, we had an egg timer. So I don't know if there was a game called Yahtzee. It was and it came with it was a little egg timer, like the sand in the hourglass thing, and you turn it over. That's how I did stick control. So you brought that timer up. I remember that, and I turn it over, and each one was 3 minutes. Yeah. And I still do that with my students today. I don't work on just the stick control book, but my exercises that I got from Tony Williams with that same structure, with wrist control. All right, so I want to ask you, what was your most challenging musical experience in your life? What was your most challenging gig or recording, or something that you just remember that was just so hard that you got through?
That's a good question. My most challenging, and I think it's the same to this day, and I don't know if I think we're all this way. I'm my worst critic, but I didn't do a whole lot of recording. I've probably and again, I have a drumming career, but it's not a career like yours, Rob, where you were playing for decades and making a living at it, like you and John Mater. But the few times that I did go into the recording studio, I was never happy. There might be like one or two songs, and okay, not too bad. But I was never 100% happy with my playing on it. And part of it was, there's a difference between playing live and playing in the studio. Live is a little more forgiving. And if you make a tiny mistake, it flies by and no one's paying attention to it. But recording is, you're under the microscope. and I was in bands where, we didn't have any money, so we had to pay, we'd all scrape, money together as an original band, unless you knew somebody that had a studio. But we just scrape, whatever, $300-400 to go block out 4 hours, maybe 5 hours of that. And we would have to do 3 songs and be done in 3 or 4 hours. And you can relate, right? And so unfortunately I had to settle because we're running out of time. And I know I frustrated a lot of my bands because I'm like, nope, let's do it again. Nope, let's do it again. Because I'd listen to the playback and go, ugh, that sounds terrible. Or, I'm hitting 2 and 4, and then the fourth measure, like I don't hit it exactly the right way, and it's a little lighter than the rest. I'm like, and again, we didn't have the technology of where, we can fix that, in Pro Tools or whatever DAW system that we have. Back then it was 2-inch tape. So I wanted to go back and re-record stuff. And so I think what I could have done better in those scenarios is I probably should have practiced a lot more and prepared before going into recording, and just really nail those parts down. And I definitely could have done a better job at that. So that's my, I guess, regret, I would say, is kind of just jumping in there, and because you can't punch in as a drummer. I mean, you can, but it's not the same as a guitar player punching in. Like if a guitar player messes up a part, like a certain section, they're not playing through the whole song. They're like, oh, well, let's punch in here, let's punch in there. And then they fix their part. It's a lot easier for the drummer back then. And even today, you have to play from beginning to end flawlessly. They can go and fix a couple of things, but it's not the same as like a guitar player or a bass player or a singer where they can just punch in and punch out. So I definitely could have done better there, for sure.
Yeah, you make a lot of good points. And another thing that I want to tell people with 2-inch tape, this is the medium, and the tape was very expensive. And I've kind of talked about this with a few of my interviews here. Time was money, and you had to play it perfectly, and anything that would go wrong, that's it. You can't fix it. The punching in, you could do some limiting things, but overall, it could be where you do something wrong, and that's it for life, and so you have to really learn, and you kind of appreciate the masters that are able to do this one take, like a Vinnie Colaiuta or a Steve Gadd, or a Jeff Porcaro, that were able to do this one take and flawless and go on, and then that's why they were hired. So it is a learning, what would you say, ability to listen to yourself back and critique yourself and know what works and what doesn't work. I've read a lot of interviews with Steve Gadd. He just says, like, I went back to the control room, I listened back, oh, that's not working. I learned how to play really simple to make it work for the song. And of course he's got, he can do anything. So I think that the whole thing about the tape was, a lot more pressure and being in the studio. And I could tell you times when I did my first recording and when I was in Boston at Berkeley, at a big studio, I was scared shitless, I mean, really, like shaking, cause it was just a very nerve-wracking thing. And you wanted it to, every note to be perfect. You wanted it to be legendary, right? I don't do that anymore. I can, with Pro Tools, I can do whatever I want, and I can play a million times. I mean, I'll still like start over again and do all that. I just, that's my nature. I always I'm never satisfied, but,
right.
But I can go, oh, I like that take, but I can kind of use this part of it and then use that part of another take, and I can Frankenstein it, So it's different now, where you couldn't do that before. You couldn't take a chorus from here and a verse from here, and this solo here and that solo there. You couldn't do it in the past. So you had to do it first time through, man, and it had to count. So that was a lot of pressure, and and there was a Steve Lukather. I just watched he was wacky, a Steve Lukather interview, and he just talked about how like guys were dropping like flies in LA. And the studio guys, but they couldn't do that. The red light would go on, and they'd freak out. They'd freeze. And he had that ability to really take on that pressure and able to perform under pressure. So I think you got a really good point there.
Thank you.
Um, so when you were studying with me, how did you benefit from my curriculums? And what areas helped you the most? What were the most valuable?
I still remember, and I have them. Like I got a whole file cabinet of stuff, and I still have your lessons actually. The rudiments. Um, and I forgot what you call them. I remember we were doing this like rough exercise, and we would like, and I forgot you called them something. There was that, and then there was also the and I still to this day I actually went out and bought the Gary Chafee book, but you had that groove pattern where you're just 2 and 4, but bass drum on one, and then you move it over a 16th note and move it over, and then you're doing doubles, first 2 doubles, second 2 doubles on the 16th notes, last 2 doubles, and so on. And I know that you got that from Gary Chafee, and I went out and bought that book from studying with you. I forgot what you call it. Like
It's called patterns.
yeah, but I forgot what that section.
Time functioning.
Yeah, that's what it is. Which is similar to the Gary Chester book. It's a little bit. Gary Chester was more like, hey, you're reading rhythms, but it's kind of the same concept where you're playing an ostinato groove and you're trying to tell your bass drum to play anywhere, obviously in time. And one thing that I learned about myself, and one of my biggest learning lessons from Steve Bowman is and I actually thank him for this, and when I used to roadie for him is, I just like any new drummer, you want to be the Neil Peart, right? You want to be the Carter Beauford. You want to be able to do all these chops and all this stuff. And for some reason, I could never be that guy. And I don't know if it's because I didn't put enough time into it or whatever. But one thing that I learned from Steve is just groove, and I started gravitating. And I shouldn't say this. I actually was already listening to this music. So like people like Jeff Porcaro, even though Jeff Porcaro probably has chops, but if you go and listen to those Toto records and Bob Skaggs and Michael Jackson and all the stuff that he's on, 90% or maybe 95% of what he's playing is just straight groove. And he sounds amazing. He's got an amazing pocket. He's playing 2 and 4, but he sounds amazing. And I kind of became that type of drummer where I wanted the music to feel good. I wanted people to dance. I don't have amazing chops. Like I can't like there's drummers that are doing all these like Herta things, around the tom, I'm like, I'm just not that guy. But I'm always trying to, and again, this is where I got from you, is that time functioning lesson, and of being able to put your bass drum on any note and make it sound good. And to this day, I mean, God, we haven't seen each other in 15, 20 years. I'm still practicing that stuff today. And it's still important, and I'm just with a cover band, but we play 52 gigs a year minus this year. You have to be able to play a groove in order for the people to stay and want to dance. And that's why I have a 4-piece. And if you look at my, you can see where my influences have come from, because if you look at my set, it's a 4-piece. It's just kick, snare, 2 toms. But I got like 3 splash cymbals. Okay, that's Stuart Copeland and Manu Katché right there. I got an auxiliary ride cymbal, and actually, I'm sorry, not ride cymbal, hi-hats. And the reason I have that is when I'm playing that faster stuff, that 180 beats per minute, I learned that I get more endurance instead of being this way to over here. And I will switch over to this fixed hi-hat when I'm doing 180, 190 beats per minute type rock grooves, which, I don't know if it's got to be a different muscle versus here. And then I'm able to use a little more like finger control over here to kind of, because I've always been a palm down drummer. I was never a big like thumb up. And I learned that from you. There's, what is that, French? That was French grip, right? On top. Yep. So I remember you telling me that. But I was never that guy. I was always the palm down. But I would come over and use the French grip on my auxiliary hi-hat to increase my endurance on faster songs like that. But definitely rudiments, reading I've learned from you. And if there's anything that I would highly recommend any student, doesn't matter if you're 15 starting today, you got to learn how to read music. It's not that hard. Yes, there's some complicated stuff. Yes, if someone threw a chart in front of me right now and said, all right, we're going to play this song today with this big band, I wouldn't be able to do it. But I would be able to figure it out as I practice and dissect certain parts. And I learned reading music with Jim Munzenreiter, my first drum teacher, out of Syncopation. That was my first book, which I still to this day use. But I wouldn't be able to like learn all these songs, note for note, without learning how to read music and figure out, some of those parts. And that, and I got that from you. I got that from everybody, to be honest with you. I got that from you, Rob. I got that from John Mader, Jim Munzenreiter, Steve Bowman, all those guys, and you were always like, hey, you gotta learn how to read music. And in the beginning, I hated it. Like any young student, this is boring. I want to get to the cool stuff. I want to get to the laser fills around the toms. But you can't play those laser fills around the tom. There's only a few guys that were able to play without reading music. I think Dennis Chambers doesn't know how to read music. But there's only a few that are able to do it. And it's not impossible. But if you look at the other folks like Steve Gadd and Jeff Porcaro and, J.R. Robinson, all those studio guys, all those guys read. Vinny Caluta, Terry Bozzio. Terry Bozzio is known for the Black Page, playing the Black Page. He wouldn't be able to play the Black Page if he didn't know how to read music. I think it's a very important, probably critical and lost art of our time is reading music. And I've seen articles and I've seen people, like I'm friends with folks on Facebook, old band members and stuff. And I remember seeing this one rant where somebody came out and said something about like, if you can't read music, you're not going to be a musician, which is not true. But I think the point was it's important to learn how to read music because that's just going to expand your vocabulary down the road, and also help you understand things like some of these songs. These are all pop songs I'm talking about here, or rock songs, whatever. But when I come across a weird tom fill and I'm listening to it, I'm like, God, I just can't figure out what he's doing. But then when I look at it on paper, I'm like, oh, now I get what he's doing there. That just speeds up your time on trying to figure out what somebody else is doing. So, going back to our lessons, it wasn't, I remember you took me through rudiments, reading. We did some drum set stuff, but a lot of stuff was on the pad, first, which again is important. And again, something that to this day I have. I mean, I got a little pad station over here with the mirror. And in fact, I have the same real feel pad that looks like the rubber is about to turn into sawdust. I still have it. But yeah, that's definitely a key thing that I think in our era can't get lost by today's musicians.
Awesome. So last question for you. What advice can you give to young musicians starting out in the music business?
Ooh. I might not be the.
And I mean that in a broad sense.
I know I may not be the right person to ask that because I'm still trying to figure it out myself. All right, I'll try to sum it up quickly for you because I know I've taken a lot of your time. I would say, well, we have this, and a lot of young students are already doing this. I mean, and again, I'm stuck with my own fears. Like, I want to do a YouTube channel. I want to start, like, I just want to put stuff out there. Like, I'm not even looking for money. I just want to put stuff out there and just be able to say, hey, I did it. I have the equipment to do it, but I haven't done it yet. So I would recommend that if you got to set goals for yourself and have a plan. Like, what do you want to do? And there's more available today than there was when you and I were coming up, you know, with the internet. You know, you got, you have, sorry, I got to move that. You know, you got YouTube, you got, I mean, the ability to record now is cheaper than it ever has been. I mean, you know, back in the 80s, in order to record, you're recording in $1 million studios. You know, you're not recording in project studios where you can go out and spend, you know, you can spend $1,000 and get like an amazing recording studio today. The fact that we have better cameras now, that's one thing that Dave Weckl always talked about years ago, was to record himself with the video camera. And again, back in the day when it was just tape, and he would go and record himself, and then go back and watch himself, you know, play back the recordings, you know, whether he was doing it live or practicing or what have you. But I'm talking years ago when he was like first breaking into the scene. And I think to this day, he still does it. And that's something that I probably should have done more, and I haven't. I do have a camera now, but that's something I would say that, you know, take advantage of the fact that you have better technology today than we did 20 years ago, 30 years ago, and use it to your advantage. And that's the key. Like anything, you can go and buy all the gear you want, but if it just sits there and does nothing, you're not going to accomplish anything. So I would say set pretty good goals, have a plan together of like where you want to be, you know, a year from now, 2 years from now, 5 years from now, maybe 10 years from now as a musician. Look for every opportunity to play with other people. I mean, I'm looking at YouTube and there's amazing drummers out there. I don't know these kids' names or anything, but they're not playing with anybody. And they got some amazing chops. I mean, stuff that I'm like, God, that could have been me. But then I go and look at the old guys like Steve Jordan. Oh my God, if you go and see some of his like videos that he has out there, and in some cases it's just a kick and a snare, I don't sound like that. Nobody does. I mean, his groove is just absolutely amazing. And that's another piece that people need to, or young students need. And, you know, chops are fun. Don't get me wrong. I wish I had the chops that I wish I had. But that's not, and it's a proven fact. That is not going to get you the gig. You know, and that's why I gravitated towards focusing on my groove, focusing on playing, focusing on my time, and got into bands where I'm playing against sequencers and pre-recorded tracks and playing with a click track. That's another lost art too that, you know, our young guys need to get into and know how to nail that stuff, because it's never going to go away. You know, the 80s kind of proved that when drum machines came out and drummers were not used. And some of the songs that I'm learning or playing are drum machine songs. And it's really hard to replicate a drum machine part as an acoustic drummer. You have to have great time to make it sound like that. So definitely focusing on your time, reading, technology, today's technology, use it to your advantage. Put time in every single day. I can say that my goals this year prior to the pandemic was practicing every day, and I haven't, because right now I'm kind of in survival mode. But last year I was practicing every day for the entire year. I don't think I missed a day last year. And the only days I didn't practice was the days that I had gigs, because I was playing later that night. But I practiced more last year, I think, because I was just getting ready for the 52 gigs that we played last year, more last year than I did probably in my entire lifetime. Because I was really trying to stick with building my endurance and being ready for these gigs and try to have the best gig possible. I went out and played these gigs like, you know, it was the last time I was ever going to play. And I had a great time. I had fun, you know, doing it. And the best compliment I ever got last year, we were playing a gig up in the mountains in a town called Breckenridge, and we're playing outside, 4th of July last year. And this guy came up to me and goes, "Hey, I don't think I've ever seen a live drummer play in the pocket as much as you did." I'm like, "Oh, wow. Thank you." He goes, "Yeah, man, most guys are just like, all over the place, but you were like in the pocket." And I told him, well, I didn't have a choice. I got a click track in my ear, you know? So that's a compliment when you got another drummer coming up to you and going, "Hey, you know, good job just playing time, playing for the music," which again, I think is a lost art, but that's something that, and then, and the last thing I would say, Rob, is don't forget the people that came before today. I mean, go back and listen to the Beatles, Led Zeppelin, Bob Marley, Miles Davis, John Coltrane. I mean, all of these folks that did not have technology. You know, the only technology that they had were really two things: their instrument and a recording studio. That's it. And you go back and listen to those recordings and you're like, holy crap, how did they do that? Well, they did it because they played every single day of their life for decades and just mastered their craft. So I hope that makes sense, but I hope that resonates with some folks, you know, because I do worry about the young generation. And what I worry about, and I don't want them to get stuck in this, but I worry about that. You know, my other guitar player in my band goes, "Yeah, everybody's a producer. They just go out and buy a laptop and, you know, do this digital music, and they're doing it with their hands." I'm like, and I even had a debate with my 16-year-old son. He wanted me to get him some digital pad so he can do some producing thing. And I have to keep telling him, like, "Tony, that's not an instrument." He goes, "Yeah, it is." "No, it's not." You know, I'm debating with my 16-year-old. I'm like, "No." So I bought him an acoustic guitar. I'm like, "That's an instrument. Learn to play that." But in electronics, there's nothing wrong with it, as long as it's a complement, not a crutch. And in order to be a musician, you have to play an instrument or you have to sing. And, you know, it's so easy to sound good on recordings today because of technology, but there's lost talent there because they're using it as a crutch. And I hope our younger generation puts more time into learning an instrument and using technology as a complement, not a crutch to get them to sound good. And I hope that makes sense.
Yeah. A lot of things that have come up lately. And I've interviewed some of my mentors, and one of the things that they said is people are not playing together.
Mm-hmm.
They're playing to tracks. And you mentioned the Instagram, YouTube, whatnot. So playing with people is different than playing with tracks. And I'm not talking about sequencing or any of that, because that's another thing too. That's another art form. But being able to play with people and keep good time without a click track, which is my era too, because that's what I had to learn the hard way, right away, from all the way from like junior high school, when I was being yelled at, and I got yelled at a lot,
Yeah.
And playing in bands live, I got yelled at a lot. If something wasn't right, or, the time was moving or something, I got yelled at. And then how that feels, when a groove happens, what that feels like, which I can't teach people that. There's no way I can teach people that. It's the feeling you get when you do it. And when you experience it, then right? But until you experience it, that euphoria of when things are clicking, there's no way of knowing. So that's another point that, playing with people rather than playing to, pre-recorded tracks and then putting that up on YouTube, which I know now it's like we have to kind of do that, but I think there's a difference you'll see when you play with different people. Hey, Burt, you have a lot of integrity, and you kept the craft going all these years, which I'm so glad I found you. My quest right now is to reach out to students. I've been teaching for over 35 years, and popping into my head are all these different people in these different eras I've taught and got to be in contact with and work with, and I'm so blessed, and I found you on Facebook, and I was so glad, and you're able to do this. So thank you so much, and let's keep in touch.
Yeah, absolutely. Rob, one last thing I'll leave with you. This interview is, I got to be honest, was extremely inspiring. I haven't talked about any of this stuff for decades, I mean, this is all stuff that's just been in my head. And as I'm kind of reminiscing and going back to our lessons and thinking about all the other teachers too, I'm like, God, I just want to play, So thanks for this opportunity. I really do appreciate it. And I'm looking forward to, so one last question. What are you doing with the information? How are you putting it out there?
Okay, so what I'm doing is I'm putting together a lesson curriculum, a lesson course with everything I know. And I'm going to pass on the tradition, because, I'm getting older, and I want to pass this on. This is what Tony Williams told me where he was videotaping his lessons, and I was taking lessons. He goes, I'm passing this on. I'm passing on the information. So my goal is to pass on the information. I'm going to use, I've already done like 10 hours of video recording of lessons. I'm trying to get really organized like you do, and write everything down and script everything. And I'm doing all transcriptions. I'm doing all these different areas. And then I'm using the interviews I'm going to input. I'll do different sections of points of students and teachers. I'm going to input that into the lessons.
Oh,
Um,
that's great.
yeah, it's going to take me a long time. I definitely got a big, head start when I was in the pandemic mode because I had time.
Right.
So I really concentrated on it. Right now, I'm editing, and it's killing me. It's a lot of time. It's just, yeah. And I'm going through and I'll do multiple takes of stuff. So that's what I'm doing, and hopefully that people will like it. I'm not like a Dave Weckl or a Steve Jordan, or I'm not like the top guy in the world, but I feel that I've been doing this my whole life, and that I dedicated my life to the craft, and I just hope this will help people. So that's my journey and my goal.
Well, Rob, one thing that I'll leave with you is, don't sell yourself short. I mean, you got to take credit for things that I wanted to accomplish that you did. So I think I shared this earlier. I'm envious of you. I'm envious, and not in a bad way, but just like, God, I could have done that too. And John Mater and Steve Bowman. I mean, all of you guys have made a living at playing music. I know it wasn't easy, but I was definitely afraid of it for some reason. And I don't know. I don't know if it was subconscious, but I was always afraid to just walk away from my job. I'm doing this full time. And then when you get a family and you have kids, it's a little harder to do. So that's why I always gravitated to cover bands, because I still was able to get my, fix, so to speak. And I'm playing live and playing real music. But where I'm going with this is, don't sell yourself short. I mean, you're a well-respected musician in the Bay Area. Another drum teacher I forgot I took lessons with is John Exapolius, which I know he had some health issues recently. And he was an amazing drum teacher too. But anyways, but John, Rob, you're an educator. I mean, there's the education today is Drumeo and Drum Channel, which are great, but it's not the same. And again, I feel it's going to be a lost art down the road because of technology. And there's nothing wrong with technology. I'm not bad mouthing it, but it's definitely changing. But to sit down one-on-one with you, or any drum teacher, any good drum teacher, is, in my opinion, is priceless versus, I love watching the videos, but sitting down with David Garibaldi, who's famous for being in Tower of Power and also groundbreaking funk drumming, we'll never get that again. Because now everyone's just going to go to YouTube and go, hey, let me go look up Chris Coleman, or who are these new cats that are coming out, which are amazing, but it's not the same. But I hope we don't lose that. I hope I hope the music art doesn't get lost on a server. That's my point. But anyways, good job. I'm looking forward to seeing the final product. Thanks for actually re-inspiring me, because when I get off our call, I have work to do for work, but I'm like, maybe I'll log an hour real quick and go play. So yeah, I appreciate it.
And you could do a little bit every day, along with your, I know your work is very demanding, but that little bit, that's how I always tell my students, even a little bit's good, every day. You can do that 15, 20 minutes, half an hour,
I got to.
Right. Just taking the time out. But, it's been really great reconnecting, and I want to stay in touch.
Yeah, me too. Absolutely.
All right, Burt.
All right. Take care.
Have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.
You too, man. Thank you.